Hi, I'm Colleen Brennan.
And I'm Janice Rodriguez.
And this is Defending Indiana. We're trying to figure out today if there's anything good to see in the towns and cities around the state of Indiana with our special guest, photographer and author, Joey Lax-Salinas. Hey, Janice.
Hey, Colleen.
Janice, I feel like this season in particular, it's been incredibly challenging to defend Indiana. I feel like we've saved topics that are difficult for season 3.
There's still a few that we haven't been able to.
Oh no,
that are still on the list that are painful that we still need to address. But
I don't even think I can. I think I'm
right. We're just gonna cut it. We're just keep pushing it. Push the pain away. Hey, it's been a rough couple of months with everything going on in the world.
It's been
so maybe we just need joy.
So yeah,
some Indiana joy.
Some Hoosier
joy.
Happiness.
There we go. Thank you. Alliteration, way better. Hoosier happiness.
Thank you.
Along with what was our Indiana tourism?
The bromance capital.
Thank you. See?
Capital of the world.
Bring it back. Hoosier happiness. See, we're coming up with slogans. Who do we know there?
I don't understand why nobody has picked up on Indiana, the bromance capital of the world.
I feel like there's at least been a focus group about it.
I feel like we've
Maybe
made a very strong case for that. Very strong.
Let's add them to the list. We need to get the Indiana Tourism Board here.
Maybe we just need to talk about it in every episode.
Right, exactly. People leave a comment on social. Cool. Are you guys going to move on to other topics?
No.
Never.
No, we're selling this bromance thing. Yeah. We're not men, but we think think it applies.
We're women-splaining you guys. Here's what you should do.
We're male adjacent.
Exactly. Are we though?
I don't know.
Sorry. Dark. I'm still dark. So I'm excited about our episode. I love it because I feel like this season has been like people who are somewhat adjacent to me, like via relationships, college, high school. Right. But that's cool though. I like that. I love you've had, direct contacts, direct friends. Like it's cool that we know a lot of accomplished people in Indiana.
I know.
Because we are from Indiana. We are from Indiana.
We are. I mean, no matter how hard we try to hide it,
right, exactly. We're from. Never deny it.
Podcast.
Yeah. So it's funny because our guest actually reached out to you because you were on Mayor Tom from Hammond, Indiana's podcast, and we're in like a group of like all Gavitt High School graduates. If you remember from a previous episode, last summer, our school closed. God, was it already a year ago? Yeah. Closed down. I went back and walked around with my friends and forgot that they didn't have air conditioning. And it was like this hot, like July or June day. I was like, how did we go to school here? Because those first couple of weeks in like August, September, and then those last couple of weeks, May, June.
Yeah.
Dude, the school had no air conditioning.
Mine didn't either.
Oh, right.
And we go back in like
that's like a common Indiana thing, right?
15th. I don't know if they thought we'd catch lake breezes, but I don't.
Open the windows. And I have allergies. I'm like, I hate all of this.
But I was in a Catholic high school, so I think we were just supposed to offer it up or something. Like just pray through the dehydration. Just
waters for winners. That was a previous.
Yeah.
That was our Bobby Knight episode.
Yeah.
Was your gym the cafeteria?
We didn't.
You had no gym, right? That's us. It was like a multi-use space, but no,
we didn't even.
There's no multi-use.
No, I want to make this perfectly
okay.
clear.
Clarify, Colleen.
We didn't have a gym.
Okay.
We didn't have basketball hoops that could drop down from a ceiling anywhere. We didn't have bleachers inside our school building. We were a small Catholic high school. No gym. We used the Naval Armory, and we did all of our basketball games at Elston High School, which was the closest public high school, like half a mile down from our high school.
Is your high school still open?
Yeah, and now they have a gym.
That's what the alumni fundraiser they were calling you.
Exactly.
God, that's so interesting. Yeah, I know. Like when when the like schools close and stuff, and people are always like, "Oh, really nostalgic." I strangely was like nostalgic when ours closed But they've been talking about it for so long. I think we were trying to talk to Mayor Tom about it. That was something, that merging of the schools, like they had been talking about that since I was in grade school, and they finally just did it. So, it's cool because I saw that our guests took some pictures of the new school, and it's kind of a big deal for them to have air conditioning.
Yeah.
But the big thing is that our schools were all made with cinder block. This is like my dorky thing that I remember, because when they tore down Indiana's School of Business, that was the big reason. They could not run like the Cat 5 cable.
Oh.
It was a connectivity issue.
Yeah.
So they're like, we need to go to drywall.
Wow.
I'm sure there were other reasons, but I think that was the main one. There you go. I'm a receptacle of useless Indiana information that directly relates to me.
That's what we specialize here.
Exactly. Let's learn more about Janice's random life as she talks about running Cat 5 cable through the Kelley School of Business.
Right. Do you think anybody knows what this episode is about?
No, we still haven't talked about it at all. Let's edit all of this out.
I'm not editing a word of this out. This is high quality entertainment, Janice.
Okay, we talked about joy. We've had a dark happiness. We've had like a dark season, if you will. So our guest is had actually gone to my high school and to my college, like my college, IU. It's like 35,000 people a year. And he is a photographer who is actually officially licensed by Indiana University, as well as has taken a lot of pictures all over Northwest Indiana. Yeah. And it's cool because I've been following a lot of people through probably since we started the podcast, through Instagram, and there's a whole, Indiana photographers kind of scene. And I just realized actually that I haven't been to a lot of places. I feel like I touch on this every episode. I'm like, what? Where's that? What? I haven't seen a lot of this state. Do you feel like you have?
So I think that's why this episode, I was thinking was going to be kind of difficult to defend Indiana in that respect, because I mean, the idea is that like, is Indiana like beautiful enough to be photo worthy? Right? Like, what have I seen in Indiana that I'm like, I'm driving on 65 and I'm like, I get the corn. Like, there's nothing. So that's where, so that's what this episode is sort of supposed to defend, is like this idea that there is something to see in Indiana that's beautiful and worthy of being photographed, and people enjoy it. So
wow, Kelly.
I don't think I'm articulating this very well.
No, you are, but you're like, is this Indiana's ugly?
Well, so I've been to a lot of places in Indiana.
Notice that she didn't correct me right away. Okay, continue.
Well, no, it's so hard, right? I think, Janice, you've backed me into a corner.
It's okay. Speak freely on your podcast.
I think there are a lot of beautiful places in Indiana.
Of course.
Just like there are a lot of beautiful places all over the United States. But I do think that when people think of Indiana, they do not think of like,
that's fair.
A great backdrop for a photo shoot.
No, that's fair. You're not seeing like you're not thinking like the landscape's pretty. But most people don't like. I would think that, for me, again, biased, but the prettiest landscape to me is like the dunes.
Yeah, I agree.
But like we talked in previous episodes, many people don't know it's even here.
Right.
But when they do, they're like, what? Obviously, your corn. I've seen a lot of beautiful pictures of kind of like barns, like that rural. And again, because we didn't grow up there, like but I see the beauty in it.
Yeah.
A lot of cool buildings. Obviously, we did our Columbus episode. There's cool architecture and a lot of the downtowns of the cities and people. And obviously, a lot of animals. Sounds so stupid. Like, I've never seen an owl. Like, I follow this guy who does like Indiana wildlife photography.
Wow.
I was like, what? There's owls here? Like, I know it sounds like, of course there's owls. They're not in Hammond, though. So they're like, it's too loud in Hammond. It's too smoky.
I think
this is so sad.
To answer your question,
I'm such an urban. I don't know. What is nature?
I have been around the state. You know what? There are a lot of places that I haven't seen that I should see, that I'd like to see. Okay. So when we talk to our Indiana bourbon guy, Dirk, he has the most beautiful pictures.
He does.
Of go to Indiana Bourbon on Instagram, folks, if you haven't, and please listen to that episode because it's fantastic and we learned a lot about bourbon. But His pictures are amazing. And they kind of had me thinking a little bit differently about what looks good in Indiana, because you know what, if I could like now pop into my Pollyanna Colleen mode, I mean, you can find beauty in anything. I just don't want to have to work that hard. Right. And I feel like I have to work hard to defend the idea that there's beauty in Indiana. Janice cannot even control herself right now. You can see her. She's like, I think I'm digging a deeper hole.
Yeah, I'm just letting you though. I'm just gonna let you. I'm not gonna interrupt. No, I mean, it's just places we haven't seen and don't see all the time, I would say. Because I even remember when I went to Richmond, Indiana for that wedding.
Yeah.
And I had to take like the weirdest way because like the highway was shut down for some accident.
Yeah.
And I was like, children of the corn. I mean, I was literally driving through cornfields and I was scared, but I was like, this is awesome. I know. And people who live there are like, what? That's just Bob's farm. And I'm just like, this is the best thing ever. Like, so it's perspective. It's perspective. It's familiarity. And to me, seeing those really cool, like old barns, like a lot of them still have like the paintings. They'll have like the year. I'm like, this has been up since 1830. So like, I don't know. I think that's cool.
I remember the weekend I got married, I had to go pick up a friend who was visiting she was from California, and she was visiting another friend in Huntington, Indiana, which is like on the east side over by Fort Wayne.
Yeah. I'm like, she couldn't get a ride, really?
No,
she's bothering you the weekend of your wedding.
She didn't have a driver's license at that point. Anyway, I was happy to
She's still your friend. Okay, sorry.
She's one of my closest friends. Are you kidding me? I enjoyed it.
Love you, Colleen's friend. But like a little much. Like I was a little busy the weekend I got married.
No. I was delighted to drive from West Lafayette, Indiana to Huntington to pick her up.
Dude, that's like 5 hours.
No, I think it was like 2.5. But that's only because it was like on country roads. Like it was like 2-lane highways. But anyway, my point is, Janice, which you're making it very difficult for me to get to. My point is, it was early October.
Ooh.
And I had never been this route before. I had never like traversed the state in the, at that point,
right,
from east to west. It's always either, like going
south.
Up north or down south. So it was one of the most shockingly beautiful trips I had taken.
See, there you go.
I mean, it was, I don't remember what route I took. I just know that the trip from West Lafayette, Indiana over to Huntington, there were like hills, the leaves were turning. It was stunning. I wanted to pull the car over. It was that great. And I was really glad that I had gone to go pick her up, not just because I love her.
Right.
And
she's my bestie. And I do anything for her. No matter
but
what
I still
Denise
remember
says.
it all these years later.
That's amazing. Because I feel like I've said this before in an episode. I had a similar experience. For some reason, I-65 was closed, and I was driving back to IU, and I took 41. Okay. So good old Indianapolis Boulevard, I call it.
Yeah.
All the way down, took 5 hours, but you pass like Wabash to Paul. Like I was like, oh, these are all these like colleges I know about. But it was same thing. It was October, and it's like people take those pictures, like the leaves. I wish people could see my hands. On both sides, like made like a tunnel. That happens at some point, like past, I want to say it's past Terre Haute. By past, I mean south.
Yeah.
Maybe it was north. It happened a couple different times, and red and purple.
Yeah.
And then, I'm like a dumb 19-year-old, but I was like, this is pretty. I want to go back. You miss home. Then you're like, no, I need to go drink some Natty Light. I got to get back to school. So yeah, I'd like to do that now as an adult. Same with like Brown County. Like you don't, when you're a snot-nosed little twerp, you don't appreciate that stuff.
Yeah.
But it really is pretty.
And when Bob and I lived in Indianapolis, I do remember how beautiful it was living in Indianapolis. And we took the boys there last summer because of our podcast. And I wanted to get, we made a stop in Indy and spent the night. We showed them where we used to live. And we'd taken them once before, but they were younger. And all they remembered was the zoo and the museum at the racetrack. So this time we had dinner in Broad Ripple and we walked around downtown and, gosh, it was beautiful. And the boys really, it's like grown teenagers. Yeah. They really appreciated it. I think they were surprised. So So shame on me.
There is beauty. It's beautiful. Listen, a lot of people come in to photograph the industrial side, like the part that we, off of toll road, like when those lights are on at night.
Yeah.
I've seen some beautiful photography of that, of like, I used to be a bit of a photog, JK. I just love saying that. Wannabe, but like I've tried to do that where you like leave your, I'm gonna have to ask our guests. I think you leave your aperture open. So, and it's a lot. You have to be steady, just try to get those lights and like with no like drag. I'm not using the right terms, but I mean, it's really pretty.
Yeah.
In its industrial way, like with the smoke coming out.
Yeah.
So not the same as the beautiful leaves, but a different kind. And those are, to me, that's Indiana. It's like as much industrial manufacturing as it is rural, as it is, just kind of that middle America, it's just everything.
And I think we've spent a lot of time in past episodes talking about the dunes. And especially, again, if you haven't listened to our episodes this season, listen to all of them.
All of them.
but pay attention to the Indiana Dunes ones, because we dedicated an entire episode to that. So I don't feel like we really need to spend a lot of time talking about that today. So let's throw some love at some other parts of the state.
Yeah, right? For sure. That I haven't seen.
Right. Exactly. In fact, I'd love it if listeners would like follow us on Instagram and Facebook and just like offer some suggestions for where we should go and what we should see. I mean, I'd love to hear what people want us to see.
For sure. I think the state parks might be a good place to start. That's where a lot of the photographers I follow seem to take pictures.
But I want hidden gems. I want people to tell me about hidden gems,
Okay. I don't know.
If anybody's listening.
I don't know any hidden gems.
Hopefully.
The White Castle on Calumet Avenue and 165th. Exactly. Hidden gem. Hey, that's gotten me through many a late night. You know what I'm saying?
2:00 in the morning. That's the best freaking thing you're going to see. I can't think of anything I want to see more than that. Our guest today is a traveling photographer and entrepreneur whose photos and videos have been featured on Good Morning America, World News Tonight with Diane Sawyer, The Weather Channel, CNN, Forbes.com, and USA Today. He's worked with John Mellencamp on the production of the DVD Trouble No More, the making of John Mellencamp's album, which won a regional Emmy Award back in 2004. Over the past 10 years, his photos have changed how all of the Northwest Indiana cities and towns appear in search engines, particularly in Google Images, by increasing the number of high-quality images that represent each municipality. He is also the author of Goodnight Indiana University, currently under contract with the Indiana University Press, available on bookshelves in October 2023. There is so much more to talk about because this guy is so unbelievably impressive. So I'm just going to let him continue with his credits. And please welcome Joey Lax-Salinas. Woo!
Hey, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I'm super happy to be defending Indiana in many different ways and talking about it with others who also enjoy defending Indiana.
Well, we're really happy that you're here because as we've led into our interview today, unfortunately, we feel like you've got some heavy lifting to do. So I'm a little cynical on some of the Indiana stuff, but I think I'm also pretty positive on some of the other stuff. We were finding examples of things that Janice and I both found beautiful about Indiana and little surprises here and there. But I think where we struggle is when people are like, there's nothing good in Indiana. And we're like, well, there is. And then we try to think of it and we can't come up with it. So help us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Indiana's full of all kinds of really, really cool, unique, special gems. It's also full of a lot of really cool, weird stuff. So I've definitely found that, going to big cities, small cities, towns, in short, for the last 12 or so years, I've been driving all around Indiana. I've been going to pretty much every single city and town in the entire state, small, big, and capturing photos. And the reason why I'm doing it, it started as kind of a pet project here in Northwest Indiana. That's where I'm from. I'm from Hammond. That's my hometown. And when I went down to IU as a college student and I would tell people where I'm from, a lot of people are, of course, are from Indiana. But when I would say, yeah, I'm from Hammond, they would kind of be like, oh, the region, and then kind of maybe question a little bit like, oh, do you live by Gary? That would always be like the first thing. And I noticed that there was a lot of I don't know what the word would be, but just there was confusion on what Northwest Indiana was, how big it was, what's there. The impression was that it was crime ridden and full of industrial, for anybody that hadn't been down there. And I wanted to change that. I personally, I've always been very familiar with all of Northwest Indiana. I get around a lot. I go out to Valpo, I go to Crown Point and everything else. And so I knew what Indiana had to offer, at least Northwest Indiana. And I wanted to showcase that. My city of Hammond, which is, it's a very eclectic city. It's got, it's got its really, really good stuff about it. And it's got its stuff that, can use a little bit of work. And I wanted to really kind of highlight all the good stuff that's in Hammond, because it is such a big city, of 80,000 people. There's entertainment, there's the lakefront, there's the marina, there's parks, there's a lot of different stuff. And people weren't aware of what was actually in Hammond or in Northwest Indiana. So I wanted to take it upon myself to change that. So I started taking photos around Hammond, started with Hammond, and it kind of branched out to Crown Point and Valpo and some other cities. And I wanted to capture just positive images. And then I had a website and a blog and things, and I would put them up there. And then they started showing up really nicely within Google Images. And so previously, when somebody would do a search on Google and they would search Hammond, Indiana, they would see a lot of black and white photos from the 40s, real estate images of houses. And that was pretty much it. There was no defining photos of, wow, this is Hammond. This is what Hammond is. A photo that really captures like the vibrancy, festivals, anything that's going on. And so that's where I wanted to change that, because like I said, I knew what was here. So I started taking photos of the marina, Festival of the Lakes, the Wolf Lake, and the actual festival itself, the bike trails, the bridges, all the things that were happening in Indiana in Northwest Indiana and Hammond specifically, in the early part of like 2010. And so after doing that, it literally changed how Hammond appeared in Google search images. And that kind of got me excited. I was like, wow, I'm kind of making a difference. Maybe people aren't really seeing it. It's not like super public, like it's on TV and, but now when people go and search for something for Hammond, it doesn't have that as much of that gritty, industrial kind of feel. You can actually see, oh, hey, like, this might be a place to check out or a destination. And that's kind of what I kept in the back of my head was, how do I make Hammond look like a destination? How do I get somebody from Indianapolis who's never really been to Indiana or been to Northwest Indiana other than driving to Chicago? How do I get them to stop before they get to Chicago? Like what would be interesting to them?
You just put this on your website and just like,
yeah,
dork in me, and just like use like your keywords, and eventually you like got cached and would show up.
Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I would from I'm gonna get a little bit techie. So I edit my photos, and then I can do what's called embedding metadata within my photos. Yeah. So I can actually add the keywords embedded in the photo itself. So when people are searching, then these images are coming up, and they're becoming popular, and people are clicking on them, and it makes them more popular and stuff too. So, so that started with Hammond. People would reach out to me and say, hey, I need a photo of Hammond for our website. And that kind of snowballed into, well, maybe I could do this for Crown Point. Maybe I could do this for Valpo. And that literally turned into every single city in Northwest Indiana, which was 58 of them. And what I consider Northwest Indiana is everything that falls in the central time zone. So that includes Stark County, which, I know is kind of borderline, and LaPorte's a little bit more northern Indiana. But I had to draw the line somewhere. I made everything in central Indiana, and then I created this hub. I went to another account that's similar to like Flickr, it's Smug Mug, and I built all these albums, and I started adding all these photos into these albums and categorizing them by city, and it just started snowballing. I had people calling me saying, hey, I need a photo for a flyer, I need a photo for my website, and I was the one that had them. There was nowhere else, unless they were going to go and take it themselves. There was nowhere else to actually get it. There wasn't a market for it, or a market available to purchase it. So I wanted to create that market. And after I got done with Northwest Indiana, I just kept on going. I was like, well, hey, I'll do all the major cities in Indiana. And then it was like, hey, I'll do all the counties. And it just kind of snowballed and snowballed. And last year was pretty intense. Last year, I did a lot of pre-planning and had basically every city that I needed to get to that I had left. And I was on the road, man, I probably put on between 20 and 25,000 miles just last year alone, driving across the state to every single city and town. And so now that it's never done. It's always growing. Cities always change. I can always go back for updates, but I've captured somewhere between 400 and 450 cities and towns in Indiana.
Wow.
And when I say I've captured them, I'm generally looking for towns that have a historic downtown. If it's a one stoplight town that doesn't have really anything there, I usually kind of just pass through it unless there is something significant. But yeah, so we have 400 downtowns, historic downtowns within Indiana, cataloged and essentially ready for people to buy as print or to license.
That's just amazing. There's a couple things that have come to mind while you were talking about this that I want to touch on. Number one is one of the things, we're in the middle of our third season right now, and we've done, I think, 26 episodes. And one of the things that's sort of this theme throughout most of our episodes is that Indiana is the kind of place where if you've got an idea and you've got some passion and some drive, you can get it done. Like you can. And that's what you've done. Like, never in a million years would I have thought of doing what you're doing, but listening to you talk about it, it's fascinating. And who knew, right? I mean, you saw this gap and you filled it. Congratulations. That's
Thank
amazing.
you very much. And it was fun. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I spent actually on the road, but yeah, I mean, it really is truly fascinating. There's so much going on. And when you're off the beaten path, when you're off the highway and you're going through some of the towns that I had never been to, that I had only heard of or seen on the map, you find a lot of surprises. Some good, some, kind of iffy.
So tell us about some of those surprises. So this was one of my questions is what are some of the things that people would be surprised to know that you've come across, and both positive and negative? I'm just interested in your experiences because you've had such extensive experience traveling across the state.
Sure. So I'll start with the negative. So one of the things that I found, I don't know if discouraging is the right word, but just unfortunate is the decay of so many old downtowns and historic. And there were so many downtowns that I went to that were just abandoned, if not completely abandoned, then most of the way abandoned. I can name a couple cities, just as examples. Not that I want to trash any city or anything like that. I certainly don't intend to do that. But one city that I was in is I think it's pronounced Cannleton. It's on the Ohio River. It's just east of Tell City. If you're familiar with where Tell City is, pretty much straight down on the Ohio River, right in the middle of the state on the bottom. So that town has an interesting background. It's an Ohio River town. Ohio River towns are probably the oldest towns in Indiana. When I go to towns along the Ohio River, I'm seeing buildings built in the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, versus up here where you don't see them until about 1880, 1890 before you might start seeing that. But Cannleton, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, I think it's pronounced Cannleton, they would get a lot of floods. And so the flood would flood the downtown area. And so I think people just kind of gave up on the downtown area and they just kind of left and went a little bit uphill and did more development. But now the downtown is completely dilapidated. Awnings over the sidewalk are falling. I have to be very careful as I'm walking through there. All the structures, I'm looking up at making sure bricks aren't going to fall on my head. That part was sad. I mean, it was, I kept on thinking to myself, like, even if this town wanted to do something to save their downtown, what would they do? Where would they get the resources? Is this a state problem? Is this a federal problem? Is it a local problem? And
I mean, with everything with the spread, I always think about this with, suburban sprawl. It's like, do people want to come back to a down? I mean, when I see a successful downtown like Whiting and like even in other areas, I'm like, oh, why doesn't that work everywhere?
Sure.
And I don't know. I don't know the answer.
No, I'm not sure either. And up here, unless you're from the area, and I'm sure both of you can go town to town and not even know that you're changing towns unless you actually see the welcome sign. When you're down in southern Indiana, I mean, there's a big gap between all the different towns, or, a 10-mile gap or something where the downtown really is the central part of a 10 to 20-mile radius, and so people in Cannleton, if I'm pronouncing it right, if they want to go to a quote unquote big city, they drive to Evansville or they go east to Louisville or New Albany. to not that they have to go all the way there to go to like a Target or a Walmart. They don't have to go that far for that. But yeah, it's like, the questions that I come across are, do the people of Candleton want a downtown? Do they just not care? Do they not have the resources? Do they not know how to go about revitalizing their downtown? Do they need ideas? What is the holdup, or what is the obstacle that keeps some of these downtowns from flourishing? We're at a time now in the last 10 to 15 years where downtowns are starting to boom again. People are, cities and towns are putting more money back into their downtowns. They're reconfiguring the streets and the sidewalks and putting bump outs. And you see that in a lot of towns like Crown Point. Crown Point, has a great square. Valparaiso, downtown Valpo is beautiful. It's beautiful. And downtown Valpo has always been great, but in the last 20 years, downtown Valpo is it's not the same as it was 20 years ago, and for the better by far.
Yeah.
Bloomington is amazing. I went to IU for 4 years, from 99 to 03, and Bloomington's a completely different city than it was when I was there. And I've only been gone 20 years. And so you have these cities that are just thriving and flourishing. But then you just have these other cities that are just failing to do anything, and they're just crumbling. And that I didn't expect to find as much abandonedness and things like that as I was traveling, until I started hitting those towns.
So how about the positive surprises? What are some positive surprises, particularly, things outside of the region? Because I think, well, the three of us understand how great the region really is. And we've sort of made a lot of episodes, a love letter to that. But I'm really interested in some of the other places in the state that we don't know about, that were also surprises to you in a positive way.
Sure. Well, some of my favorite towns to go into were the county seats of the county. Most of them in Indiana have a traditional town square, and I thought that was so cool. Almost every county, we have 92 counties in Indiana, and almost every single one of them still retains its old historic courthouse. And within that, you have booming little businesses and lawyer offices and restaurants and stuff like that. And I've always thought that was really cool. So when I would go to a new county that I had never been to, particularly something that's off the highway, maybe on like the Indiana-Ohio border, somewhere that I just haven't gotten to, I would be excited. I was waking up in the morning, like, just excited to get in my car because I want to see what Liberty, Indiana looks like, and just these random towns. And I get there, and a lot of times, because I do my research, I do know what it's going to look like when I go there, because I have to research. I'm researching which way buildings are facing and how the sun comes in. And when I get there, is the sun going to be shining on the east side or the west side of downtown? I do a lot of that research. So I do have some idea, but when I actually get there, it's really cool. So that's one of my exciting things about traveling Indiana, was going to the county seats and seeing the courthouses. And I started another project, which, I'll get to in a little bit, about the courthouse project. But that was really nice. The people in Indiana are amazing. I can't tell you. So the number one question I get asked whenever I'm taking picture is, "Hey, are you from the newspaper?" That's, I 100 times a year I get, "Hey, are you from the newspaper?"
Yeah.
So,
I love that, like old timey news guy. Like, hey,
yeah, always. Yeah. If they're 40 plus and they're talking to me, that's the first thing that they ask me. And so that inevitably starts a conversation. I can't help but to say, yeah, I'm taking pictures of all the cities in Indiana, and that just kind of leads. So I talk to a lot of people. And when I go into these towns, especially the small towns, like if they have like a cute little restaurant or cafe or something like that, I go there and eat. Like I go there and eat, and I talk to people. I ask the waitress random questions. They're probably like, "Who's this guy? Like, who's this tourist coming through Liberty, Indiana? Like
this investigative reporter."
Yeah. Like, what's he up to? He must be up to something. So, just talking to the people and getting information about the town that I don't know as I'm still there, that's really cool. And then I guess third would be, I like architecture a lot. So some of the towns in Indiana have done a fantastic job at preserving their architecture and their history. New Manchester is beautiful, which is like north central Indiana. It's like,
thank you. That was my next question. I'm like, where is it? We never know. Like you're just saying things, and I'm like, tell us more. In my other screen, I have a Google map up. I'm like, what is he talking about?
Sure. Yeah. Is it North Manchester is really cute. Huntington, which is just south of Fort Wayne, is a very cute. Are you from? Are you?
No, we were just talking about, before you came on, we were talking about one of the prettiest drives I've ever taken was from West Lafayette to Huntington, Indiana.
Yeah, the Hoosier Highway. I didn't even know we had it.
amazing.
I didn't even know we had it.
I didn't
That's
either.
called a
What is
Hoosier
it?
Highway? Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Or did you make that up?
It's literally it's an expressway. I mean, it's not technically an expressway, but it is a 4-lane divided highway that goes from Lafayette all the way to Fort Wayne. And I had no idea it was even there. It goes through Peru and I can't remember some of the other towns, but all the way up through Huntington. And it's beautiful. It's hilly.
Yes.
It's really cool. I mean,
Dude,
and I guess
how
it
do
makes
I not know this, Colleen? This is horrible.
And I did it in the fall when the leaves were gorgeous and amazing. So
it was really cool. And those are just some of the things that I find along the way, and those are kind of some of the pleasant surprises. That was a pleasant surprise because it allowed me to get from Lafayette to Fort Wayne a little bit quicker. And of course, on the ride, it was very pretty and hilly, and I was kind of surprised by that. And after I get home, I'm looking up the topography and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, it's like, well, the Tippecanoe River, it's that whole area is kind of like a gorge, like as you go through, and the highway kind of follows along that. It's really, really cool. But yeah, there's a lot of cool towns. And there's a lot of really, really small ones that are cute. Battleground. If you've ever heard of Battleground. Yeah. So it's right off of I-65, right by Lafayette, except it's on the east side of I-65.
Oh, is that the Tippecanoe Battleground?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because I went to grad school at Purdue, and I think my husband, who also went there, was talking about that. But I don't think I've ever been there. I might have.
No, it's very, very small. There's not really much to the downtown, but it looks like it's like a downtown that's surrounded by woods, and it looks like an old train stop from like the late 1800s. It's just, like I could just see the old steam engines like coming I mean, I wasn't really seeing them, but in my mind, just seeing the old steam engines coming through and blowing their whistle and stuff, like it almost reminded me of like Fried Green Tomatoes, like that movie. Like it was that kind of a really country kind of town that's off the beaten path, and just really cool. Like I found myself, it was a town that, as I go through, I kind of plan and say, okay, this is a small town. I can only spend about 25 minutes here, and I have to allocate all my time. And I think I doubled, my allocated time, and even had to skip the next town or something because, I just find things and I go down the rabbit hole. I'm not afraid to go down the rabbit hole at all.
This is so fascinating to me. I'm like writing everything down. Like, because I want to get out there. I haven't seen so much of the state, and it's a big state.
It is. It's big. It's a lot bigger, than it looks on a map. That's for sure. But yeah, and there's a lot of cool towns that are almost like bed and breakfast towns. New Harmony, which is, if you're familiar with New Harmony, is a really, really cute town. And for those that aren't familiar with New Harmony is kind of like I call it the toe of Indiana. It's the very, very, very bottom tip. It's almost the last city at the very bottom. And New Harmony is actually one of the only cities that's west of Hammond in Northwest Indiana because of the way Indiana kind of goes like that. But New Harmony was super cute, super cute. I can't wait to go back and check it out more. I wish I would have allocated more time for it.
So what I want to make sure we allocate enough time for, how is that for a segue?
Sorry.
Smooth and fabulous. I want you to tell us a little bit about the industrial photography that you've done. I watched The Ghosts of Gary. And if you guys haven't seen it, just Google, I think, Ghosts of Gary, and you can get a sense of what I'm talking about. Tell us a little bit about that and urban exploration and what that's all about.
Sure. So about 10 years ago, as I'm looking around to see like what pictures in Northwest Indiana are here, I wanted to make sure that I incorporated Gary into it. Because obviously Gary has the reputation that it has, especially outside of Northwest Indiana. So I wanted to highlight some of the nice things about Gary. Well, of course, in doing that and going around Gary, there's a lot of things that aren't as nice that I found completely fascinating. I mean, until I started doing these, I didn't realize that some of the buildings were abandoned and standing there 40 years later, still standing. And so I was kind of like, I would see a couple other photographers' photos, and I was like, well, I need to kind of check this out. And so one of my friends is actually on the police force, and I hired him. I was like, hey, I have this idea. I want to go in these abandoned buildings in Gary, but I don't really want to do it by myself. So we did, and we went in the City Methodist Church, which is like the crown jewel of like urban exploration, especially in Northwest Indiana. And it closed in 1972. It stood abandoned for years and years and years. And so I went there, took pictures of it. It was beautiful. The Palace Theater in Gary, which is a gigantic movie theater that was built in the 1920s, still standing. The curtain was still up. The curtain was drawn and down, had been for many years. It's now since collapsed and fallen and stuff. But yeah, and so I had this idea of taking photos of the church and then going back periodically to document its decay, because some of the architecture was just so cool. And so the Ghost of Gary, so Channel 13 down in Indianapolis, which is the NBC affiliate, they contacted me. They were like, "Hey, we've come across your pictures and we want to come up and do a story on Gary. Could you spend the weekend with us and just like go around and talk to us about it and show us around?" I was like, "Sure." And so we went there and I had all this stuff. And the morning that they came up, the previous night, only 8 hours before they came up for us filming, the entire roof of the City Methodist Church collapsed in on itself. So when we went there to actually do the interview, the whole roof was in, and it was just crazy. And there was several other photographers that were there because they had also heard, through the social media that the roof had collapsed. And so everybody was there kind of taking pictures. And so we did this big segment and stuff, which you can see, and you can actually see us talking about how it just fell in on the Ghost of Gary video. But it was just fascinating because I would start going in there for about a 5-year period after I initially started, and it would just keep on changing. It kept on changing, right? Some of it by people bringing things in and knocking things down, and some of it just nature, water creeping its way in and doing its thing.
So I'm really curious about, this area obviously has been termed the Rust Belt, right? The whole, I guess we would call that from Pennsylvania through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan.
Yep.
And you had experience, photographing a lot of other places in the country. So how does Indiana compare when it comes to this type, of urban exploration? I'm curious because number one, you were talking about the city earlier down on the Ohio River, whose downtown was lost obviously to flooding and what that did. And Gary and some other cities have different reasons for it related to industry, whatnot. What have you come across in other places around the country that have gone through similar changes? And is there any sort of common thread that you've noticed?
It seems that the cities that, and it could just be my take on it, but it seems that the cities that are struggling the most, maybe at one point had a large employer that employed a lot of people in the area that has since closed down. For example, like in South Bend is probably not the best example, but when the Studebaker plant closed, that's an example. I know down in Peru was known as like the circus capital of the world. I had no idea that like all the circuses would go to Peru, Indiana, I guess in overwinter, until the next season. I had no idea. And so now circuses aren't really what they were back in the 40s and 50s. But there was such an industry based around Purdue, based on the circus, So, and I know that there's a lot of other examples of, large employers that have left an area, but I think that that's one of the toughest things for towns in Indiana to struggle through is when you have a large employer that takes care of the town, so to speak, and then they up and leave. What's the town to do? What do they do? How do you just create a new industry in your town that's been known for making this particular automobile part or this, where do you go next? And so that was kind of interesting as I went around. I don't really think that's unique to Indiana. I think that that's, unique to, maybe not even unique to the Rust Belt, but I think that's a popular theme within the Rust Belt is that these towns are, losing out when some of the large employers, kind of pack up and leave town or close or for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's like West Virginia, Pennsylvania, like you said.
Yeah.
Is that all Rust Belt? Yeah. But
Yeah.
anywhere. And when something significant changes, they would give so much money, there'd be so much tax revenue. I don't know.
Yeah.
These are like things we're gonna have to learn from to and that kind of ties in the downtown because like
Right.
My mom will tell you that Gary was like the gem. Like she didn't go to Chicago to shop. She shopped in Gary. It was like, and so it's kind of sad to see this happened, but it's also, I kind of get mad about it because I'm like, okay, it's been like 40 years. Like we've seen like the decline of, manufacturing and all that. It's like, why couldn't we do something to prevent it? So, I mean, I hope people can, I'm looking forward to it getting back on its feet, and I know they have the convention center and a lot of things. So, but yeah, I mean, it's going to keep happening all over Indiana.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And probably, such is the cycle of life, right? I mean, businesses come, businesses go, and but how does a community adapt, or what resources can be made available, and kind of going back to what I said earlier, is this a local problem? Is it a state problem, or is it a federal problem? Like where can these towns turn, when they know, because inevitably, the towns know when a factory is going to shut down. It doesn't just shut down overnight. They're essentially given notice, or it comes out in the paper that such and such plant is going to shut down. Where do these towns turn to? Like, who do they turn to? And what resources are available to them to not have their town collapse?
Yeah, sometimes there's not a lot of notice. Just to clarify, like I know that like the Warren thing is only like 30 days. Like, if you're going to lose, then that's a federal law. Again, sorry, dork. I know the most random things, but
no, you're right.
But yeah, but some like there's been a lot of that feeling of like the rug was pulled out from under us.
So are you seeing that in other towns that still have, or who have revitalized their downtowns? So what does that look like in those 92 other counties? I mean, somehow somebody's making it work, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And are those cities that have more sprawl? Are those communities that have more sprawl, or are they really sort of confined to the boundaries of the town?
I'm not 100% sure, but it seems that the cities right now in Indiana, the cities that are on the outskirts of the major cities are the ones that are doing the best. Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville, Avon, Plainfield. So, those ones in the Indianapolis area. In Fort Wayne, there's a couple small towns that are just on the Roanoke. That's a very small town I had never even heard of. It's a tiny town, super, super cute. It's like a I don't know, like where my sister would go to get her prom dress or something. Like, they have boutique shops and stuff, and it's really, really cute.
Yeah. And I was telling Janice earlier, we took our kids down to Indianapolis last year for the first time in a long time. And I'm impressed with how just even Indianapolis, or if I go to downtown West Lafayette or Lafayette, what they've done with their downtowns. A good friend of mine with some restaurants and some other businesses around there. So, yeah, it's fascinating. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to start wrapping this up. But before I ask you my final two questions, I do want to know, like, what are the, like, do you have like a top 3 or a top 5 favorites in terms of what you've photographed or what you've seen in Indiana? And I hate asking people to list their favorites because I can never list my favorites, but I'm going to do that to you. So I'm sorry. But can you answer that?
Sure. I can answer that a little bit broadly. It's hard to pinpoint exactly like specific things that I liked photographing, I guess. Cause I do have a wide, like, array of things that I like to do. I particularly loved, photographing the county courthouses. That was one of my favorite things to do, and seeing the architecture and then learning a little bit more about, the design of the building. I noticed that county courthouses built between 1900 and 1920 tend to be very blocky, like the Porter County courthouse, that type of limestone block kind of, and then the ones before that, like the late 1800s, are much more ornate, like the Crown Point courthouse. So that was always exciting. When I knew I was going to go to a county seat and it had a beautiful courthouse, I was always really excited about that. Franklin, Indiana has a beautiful courthouse. Noblesville is beautiful. Tippecanoe is absolutely beautiful. It's white marble. It's the only, I think, courthouse in Indiana that was made out of white marble, or at least if it's not white marble, it looks like it's white marble. So I really did like doing those. And then again, just I get capturing a photo of a downtown that people don't really know about, and really trying to capture the entire essence of what that downtown is in one photo. That was fun and difficult also, because how do you capture a photo in one town? because I wanted to be able to do that. I want people to be able to look at the photo and say, hey, that's my town. Like, that's the store I go to. I used to go to that ice cream shop all the time, and be able to look at a broad picture of a town and say, and feel that way. So those were the things that I liked the most about photographing just around Indiana in general. And then and just the weirdness that's around Indiana, and just not knowing what I'm going to come across, like the abandoned buildings, I came across storefronts that had been abandoned for 40 years. They had like old violins in the window and trumpets and weird, bizarre stuff. Jars of marbles, that were full of spider webs that had just weird stuff.
Isn't that so creepy? It's like
Creepy.
They just left. It's almost like
left. Yeah,
that's like, so weird to me. Wow,
it's like Chernobyl. Some of the towns are like Chernobyl. Like it literally looks like everybody just up and left. Like something happened and boom, everybody just split and never came back.
Like walked away. Oh my god,
yeah, that's
walked away.
So that was always interesting to come across those.
Okay, all right. So sadly, Joey, we have to wrap this up.
Sure,
but tell us first, what's your favorite thing about the state of Indiana?
Oh man. I listened to your guys' episode on food, and there's a lot of good food in Indiana, but it's like on the DL. You know what I mean? Like it's like people don't really know about it, and a lot of times it's off the beaten path. I loved trying the pork tenderloin sandwiches. Like as I went all around the state, I tried everybody's different pork tenderloin sandwiches, and everybody has a little bit of a different take on it. But, of course, the Indiana style is really, really big with the bun that's only about that big. So that was fun. I liked eating my way through Indiana. That was probably my funnest thing, was just eating my way and being able to stop in a town, take a couple pictures, go in this little cafe, have a pork tenderloin, wrap it up, wipe my mouth, off to the next town.
You've had your cholesterol check lately, right, Joey? Please tell me. You've had a checkup, right? Because that's a lot of pork tenderloin. Okay.
Yep.
We care. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. If you could change one thing about Indiana, what would it be?
The perception that it's not just corn, despite the jingle that we all know. The perception, leaving the state of Indiana, when I travel and go to, California and Florida and stuff, the impression of Indiana is generally the same. It's not bad. It's just that there's nothing here. It's like what we think of Iowa, like when you think of Iowa, that's what other people think of Indiana. And I wish that they knew that we had sandy beaches. I brought friends in that weren't from the area and had never been to the area, and I took them to the dunes, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like you can't even see across the lake."
That's like the craziest thing. And the dunes episode is one of my favorites because we grew, Janice and I both grew up,
Sure.
Lake Michigan adjacent. So, I agree.
Yeah.
Crazy, right?
Yes, it is. It is. For sure.
Because we're here. We're trying to spread the word. We're trying to spread the magic.
I think you've done an amazing job, Joey Lax-Salinas, defending our state.
Thank you. If I can do a quick little promo here,
please do.
I know. So you mentioned that I'll have a book coming out next year. So this is a rough copy of my book.
Ooh,
I love it.
Yeah. So this is actually an illustrated book. And it's all about it essentially gives you a tour of Indiana University from a kid's perspective. And you're saying goodnight to all the landmarks. So that is, and it is. It's really cool. And it is heartwarming, like especially if you went to IU. This is as much entertaining book for kids as it is a book to indoctrinate like your kids into going to IU.
Get them early. Get them. Go Hoosiers. All right.
IU. Yep. And so, but that has actually been picked up by Indiana University Press. They're going to be my publishers, and that book is going to be released. Thank you so much. And it's coming out in October 2023. It should be on bookshelves to any bookstore that wants to carry it. So, so that's really cool. You had also mentioned that I worked with John Mellencamp briefly, which I did in college. So we actually this is the DVD that we made. It's called Trouble No More, the making
Yep.
of a John Mellencamp album. We had the opportunity to visit him at his studio and at his house and film. And I had a small role in the production of that. I'm credited in the back as production assistant. I got to actually take all the footage home and write down everything that John does. That, at 1 minute and 20 seconds, he throws his.
Colleen knows about that. Yes.
Yeah. So it was really cool. I got to go through all this, behind the scenes footage and document it all. And that was really cool too. Aside from that, anybody that wants to see my Indiana photos, you can visit indianaphotos.com, or you can visit my entire hub of photography, which is joeylax-salinas.com. And then you can pretty much get to any city. You can click on Northwest Indiana. It's divided by region, northern, central, southern. And you can also see my Indiana University photos. I'm a collegiate licensed photographer for IU. So I go to all the campuses statewide, take photos. I mainly focus on Bloomington, of course, because that's my passion there. But if you wanted to buy a large print, anything else, framed, matted, metal, anything else, I think me and one other person are the only official collegiate licensed photographers for the entire university. So anybody
That's
that
awesome,
wanted,
Joey.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of work, and it's a lot of fun too. I love IU and I love going back, and it gives me an excuse. And
That's
now
so
great.
Now
I can
Colleen,
go there and pay for it.
This is where I drop in and see if Joey knows this. My favorite factoid of how that John Mellencamp was my commencement speaker in 2000, right? For my
I was.
He does. He already knows.
Yeah. So
I try to drop that in every episode, and Colleen's like, enough. We know.
Did you go to his free concert that was in the Arboretum that he did? And that would have been the fall of '99.
Did I?
He was traveling to all these different cities, and then Bloomington was his last stop, and he did a free concert right in the middle of the Arboretum. It was really
come
cool.
on.
Yeah, sorry.
I was
a nerd. You were there?
I was front row. Yeah.
All right, Joey, how do I get Mellencamp as our guest? Because he's like,
ding, 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 ding.
What? I would do anything.
His address.
He has his address. We're just knocking his door in Seymour.
Yeah, you can knock on his door, knock on his gates. He lives on Lake Monroe.
Come on, Joey, you gotta have a connection. We'll talk offline.
Sure. So the best, I would reach out to.
Wait, we'll talk offline.
We'll talk offline. Yeah. We don't have to go there for that.
He's sending us a cease and desist. Like, what are you doing? Giving out my number, right?
Yeah. I do have to say this, for everybody who's listening, not only everything that Joey said, but gosh, go check out his website, because the pictures that you have there, and he's got Indiana photos, and we're pushing Indiana, but there are photos of all over the United States. Beautiful images. Joey, I was so impressed. Just noodle around on his website and see what he's got there. You guys will be really impressed. This is an impressive guy, and you take beautiful pictures, and we're really grateful that you took the time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Defending Indiana, featuring Colleen Brennan and Janice Rodriguez, is produced by Colleen Brennan and Janice Rodriguez. Theme music and sound editing by Michael Miltenberger. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard today, you can subscribe to Defending Indiana wherever you find your favorite podcasts.